campuses, we know they used to be held up as the example of free speech. It's where free speech reigned. People could express their views of all kinds without censorship, without having to worry about discussing the differences. They could do it in a civil manner. But in recent years, civility has given way to many protests, and not even demonstrations against a point of view, but against that view even being expressed in the first place. That issue coming to a head today at a campus that is no stranger to controversy over the decades. The city of Berkeley, California has banned billy clubs, torches, baseball bats, and smoke canisters from a large part of the city today. And on the campus of the University of California at Berkeley, a closed perimeter goes up this afternoon, with access granted only to those who have tickets to a speech by conservative commentator Ben Shapiro. He's drawn protesters at previous appearances on California campuses and had to be escorted off the stage. Earlier this year, conservative political columnist Ann Coulter canceled a speech at Berkeley after students and others rallied against her appearance there. Former Breitbart columnist Milo Yiannopoulos similarly dropped out of a campus appearance earlier this year.
Won't allow students to listen to differing points of view. They're absolutely petrified by alternative visions of how the world ought to look, and people with arguments and fact and reason that don't conform to the crazy social justice left vision of the universe.
But he is vowing to attend Free Speech Week events at Berkeley later this month. Ann Coulter is also slated to attend the event. So let's dig a little deeper now. Joining us for a look at politics and free speech on campus, Cabot Phillips, Director of Campus Outreach at the Leadership Institute. When you first hear this, and I know that your history doesn't go back as far as others when it comes to life and free speech, protests on college campus, what do you think when you hear about this?
It's sad because Berkeley really was the start of the free speech movement in the 1960s on college campuses, and now it's become a place where students are convinced any idea that is offensive to them, any idea that hurts their feelings, they should be shielded from. And if anywhere in America should be a place where we exchange ideas, where we hear things that make us uncomfortable, it's a college campus. And now students, they're more afraid of a speaker coming to campus than they are of these mask-wearing, bat-wielding anarchists on their campus. They'd rather have those people than they would ideas they disagree with. And sadly, this is not surprising. It's not just contained to Berkeley either.
The Free Speech Week, it seems to be a bit of a compromise, I guess, or a loose compromise in some way. Is that going to work? Is it not going to work?
I think it's going to work. The administration felt a lot of pressure in the last few years because they've just been canceling events. They canceled an event of Ann Coulter, Milo Yiannopoulos, and others. Conservative speakers they've been shutting down on campus. And there was a lot of outside pressure from the donors to the school and also from the local governments there and the Republican Party in California. So the school kind of curtailed those demands, said, okay, we'll do everything we can to protect it. But who knows? You've got so many students and anarchists and protesters coming from around the country, really, to descend on this to try and shut down these events. So it's definitely going to be controversial.
I want to touch on that in a second, but first, let's stay on this path when it comes to Berkeley and the speakers there. If you are that speaker and you are starting to feel like you might not be welcomed by all when you speak there, what's the best path to do? Do you do the Ann Coulter route and say, I'm not going to be there? Or do you say, I'm going to go, but let's make sure that I'm safe, even if it goes to the extremes of protection?
Yeah, I think you speak no matter what. Ben Shapiro is doing the right thing here and not curtailing and shutting down his speech because there are people threatening him. Usually if someone is offended by what you're saying, it probably means you're telling kernel of truth if people are upset by it. And again, these students, this is what happens when we raise a whole generation to think that no matter what happens, you should not have to be uncomfortable in your daily life. And I wish we could tell a lot of these students, Constitution Day is this weekend. We could tell them the Constitution does not have a clause that says you have a freedom from hurt feelings. It says that, you have a freedom of speech. And that's what these students sadly don't respect. They don't realize it goes both ways. If you shut down speech you disagree with, one day your speech can also be shut down too. So that's why we need to allow all, marketplace of ideas and all ideas to get out there.
Now, when it comes to opposition, though, whether feelings are hurt or whether you just don't believe in the message, there are obviously, and we have seen this much more recently, there are two types of protests. There are those who have peaceful protests and say, I don't agree with this, I'm going to hold up a sign and make my voice heard. And then there are the anarchists who come out with violence, prepared for violence, I should say. When it comes to these college speeches, are these Berkeley students protesting, or are these people coming in from all across the country to make a statement?
Yeah, we've covered at Leadership Institute's Campus Forum how many of these protests, they start with just students, and they definitely devolve where it's people coming from all over because they know they kind of have a free pass. They can go, they can light things on fire, flip a few cars, and there's so many of them, it's kind of a mob rule where the police are not able to arrest everyone. Like you said, protest is a good thing. That's what America's about. If these people are doing it peacefully, they're holding up a sign, they're chanting, that's a good thing. That's what the country's about. But it's when it devolves into violence and intimidation tactics that's a problem, and it is becoming a thing where it's more prominent. It's not just these outside forces, and anyone that is standing with violent protesters, in many cases, they're guilty by association. If you are associating yourself with people running around beating up innocent, bystanders, then you're in the wrong for letting that happen and being with those people.
So for the college campuses, and Berkeley, like you mentioned, goes back decades, and at this point, he's pretty much prepared to know how to respond to things. Other college campuses across the country, what should they do to make sure that they're not, if outsiders come onto that college campus and that college experience, how do they best prepare for those situations?
I think it starts with teaching history. Teaching these students the importance of allowing discourse on campus and teaching students what the price of that free speech was in the first place, teaching them to revere free speech, not fear it. And also it comes down to the campus doing whatever they can to, protect free speech and say, hey, we're going to be willing to put some funds towards whether it means extra security, whether it means, more administrators to protect these events from going on.
Do you take the step of limiting, say, you have to have a campus ID to be in this part of campus or to be on campus that day?
I think it depends. If it's a private school, you can certainly enforce measures like that. Public schools, it's public property, taxpayer-funded institutions. Anyone should be allowed on those campuses to express their points of view. So you definitely don't want to curtail who's coming on this public property. It's going to be a slippery slope.
All right. We'll talk more about it, and we'll hear much more about it. Cabot, thanks for joining us once again.